Good evening, America, and this is Q News Tonight, the world's first live daily gay evening news show, and it's 7 p.m. Thursday, February 13, 2020. Q News Tonight is live and unscripted, so anything can happen. Tonight, we bring you the news of and a perspective from the LGBT community. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and these are my co-anchors, Aaron Darr and Napoleon Plays. So let's cue up the news. Breaking news tonight, Q breaking news, is that the Senate has passed today a bipartisan war powers resolution limiting President Trump's actions against Iran. In this breaking news, the Senate has voted in a final vote of 55 to 45 to limit the president's powers against Iran. All 47 Democrats and 8 Republicans backed the bill. Thoughts about what has happened today?
I'm glad that we're starting to see somewhat of a fraction of the Republicans in the United States Senate hold this president accountable in regards to his go-at-it-alone strategy in regards to foreign policy under the Trump administration. His actions in regards to foreign policy, in particular Iran, have been very concerning in the past, and this is a step in the right direction in the U.S. Senate.
It is a step in the right direction, but let me ask you, Aaron, in particular, what do you think that this will actually change? We are finally seeing the Senate actually take a stand against the president, but what will a resolution do? What will this actually cause to be different than what we've seen for the last 4 years or for even before that?
Well, what this does is, because of the fact that it is somewhat bipartisan, more partisan than anything, but again, 8 Republicans did vote for this. This is showing that we're going to try to hold the president accountable in regards to his dangerous and destructive foreign policy, which can get us all killed. At the end of the day, impeachment, it doesn't matter. This matters more than anything because of nuclear weapons or escalation that could lead to war. I was very happy to see this because it's putting into place a foundation that the president must adhere to in a system of checks and balances that he must go through Congress to act further.
Well, we continue in breaking news tonight, completely different vein, and we're going to talk about RuPaul's Drag Race. RuPaul judges have been announced today for season 12, and it's really big news. It included the AOC, Whoopi, Nicki Minaj, and more. We've prepared this. Watch.
I'm so thankful that you're part of our country.
Thank you.
I think you are fabulous.
It will go down in her street.
Gentlemen,
I have a surprise so big, you'll never see it coming.
You bitches aren't ready.
What are you waiting for? Join the revolution. Do it for your country.
I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the drag. To the drag. To the drag.
I pledge allegiance to the drag.
This is exciting. The largest contingent of celebrity judges ever in the history of RuPaul's Drag Race revealed today Nicki Minaj, Whoopi Goldberg, AOC, Chaka Khan, Robin, Leslie Jones, Normani, Daisy Ridley, Thandie Newton, Olivia Munn, Rachel Bloom, Daniel Franzese, Jonathan Bennett, Winnie Harlow, and Goldblum. What do y'all think about the announcement of season 12? It's quite amazing, isn't it?
This is the most that I've ever recognized the judges that are actually going to be on it. I have a little bit of a fan crush on a couple of the people that were mentioned, and I'm really, really hoping that for Robin, they have the best lip sync that ever happened in actual season 1 of All Star, where they have Raven come back out just to be fantastic and sing Dancing on My Own.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is exciting. I mean, for our viewers, we do a lot of reporting on RuPaul very often, and I think it's safe to say that everyone here at this table is a fan of RuPaul and RuPaul's Drag Race.
Absolutely.
So I'm happy to see that they're continuing to put a lot of individuals from a wide spectrum of society and in the arts and in culture incorporated into next season.
This season in particular, actually, very few things were announced about it, but one of the things that was AOC stating that she was happy that some of the participants that were in this exact season, that this was a peak experience for her, and she was happy to see others a part of our country. And it seems that America is a core factor in the 2020 election year.
Yeah,
absolutely. We're talking about the show tonight.
That's right. And as we're talking about RuPaul, a very big LGBT voice, we want to know, are LGBT voices important to you? Can the news of the world have a gay community perspective? If you, like us, think the answer is a resounding yes, then like and subscribe to Q News Tonight on Facebook and on YouTube. Do our gay stories impact you, your friends, and family? Start a watch party. Get your circle involved in our conversation as it supports the gay community.
Well, we're going to queue up the USA tonight, and we report that John Kelly has finally let loose on Trump over the Vindman dismissal and also about media. We've prepared this setup of the story. Watch this.
He said some interesting things, too, about North Korea, the press, and in many ways he sounded like the anti-Trump. I mean, with respect to North Korea, he said Kim Jong-un, the North Korean leader, is not going to give up nuclear weapons, and North Korea has really played us. Talked about the press as being not the enemy of the people. And so it was an interesting appearance where you could see that now, a year out of the chief of staff job, John Kelly is opening up a bit more about some of his differences with this administration.
Former chief of staff to President Donald Trump, John Kelly, has reached his breaking point after Donald Trump has recently fired Vindman from his position within the White House. And he's now, for the first time, airing his grievances publicly and his frustration with President Trump in the time that he was chief of staff, going as far as to say that the press isn't really the bad guy, if you will, in this scenario, and that the press is good for the American people, and even going on to kind of out the president and saying that he's absolutely delusional in the assessments that North Korea has agreed to step back from their nuclear arms, and saying that President Trump kind of does this whole go at it alone foreign policy, and he kind of creates a lot of dysfunction and chaos within the institution of the White House and those working to influence diplomacy abroad.
John Kelly, it took so long. I wonder why.
Well, he's not the only one. I mean, Rex Tillerson, who's the former Secretary of State, he also has been very quiet as well. There have been many people that have been very quiet, but I think that when you see former National Security Advisor John Bolton coming out with his book, which will be coming out very shortly, The Room Where It Happened, and his role to some extent in the impeachment trial of President Trump, I think it's creating a foundation for others to come forward to express their grievances and their concerns as we approach the 2020 election as to why, from their firsthand experience working directly with this man, why he doesn't deserve 4 more years.
Right. We continuing our queuing up the USA by reporting tonight that a police officer who said he was told to tone down his gayness, quote unquote, gets a $10 million settlement and a promotion. We've prepared this. Watch this.
Sergeant Keith Wildhaber sued the St. Louis County Police Department for discrimination. He joined the department back in 1994 after 4 years in the armed services. Sergeant Wildhaber said in his lawsuit that he has received, quote, extremely positive feedback throughout his career, but was repeatedly passed up for promotion. He also said after he filed a complaint, the department retaliated by transferring him 30 miles from home to Jennings and putting him on overnights. That, too, was part of his lawsuit and the $19 million judgment in his favor.
We're seeing this case in 2017 with Keith Wildhaber in St. Louis County and how the police department handled it. Keith states that he was told by his supervisor that they had a problem with his sexuality and to tone down the gayness, as you reported. In response to that, he didn't get a promotion that he says that he not only should have, but that data supports. And then in retaliation for putting that forward and for putting that concern forward, he says that there was unlawful retaliation. He filed this with the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission as well as the Missouri Commission of Human Rights. They stated that between the 27-mile difference and the shift in his, or the change in his shifts from afternoon to evening, that it was a clear case, and many different groups have gotten involved to help support him. The county has, of course, responded in multiple ways in the past 3 years. They've had changes. Keith was promoted to being a lieutenant, and he also leads the new diversity and inclusion unit in the county.
How is it possible in 2017, much less today, a police department in America would say, tone down your gayness? How is that possible?
You know, what's most interesting to me about that is that, first of all, we only see a picture. And of course, that was the conversation we were having first seeing this, is what does that even mean? How gay is he? You were saying, how gay do I have to be if that's how gay he is? And so It's frustrating because if a person can't be who they are and they're not protected in all ways, then that's absolutely valid. And we're seeing one case where he received money out of this, he was promoted out of it, but it doesn't always end that well.
It makes me realize that Aaron Darr is never going to be a police officer in Missouri.
Oh yeah, but this is also a larger part of the conversation. This is why ENTA is so important in U.S. Congress right now.
Absolutely.
The Employment Non-Discrimination Act, which the Democrats have passed in Congress, and it's been sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. We need to do this. You can get married in America on Sunday, but you can be fired for being gay on Monday.
Catch up to Switzerland.
Yeah. We continue in queuing up the USA. Another interesting story that affects our community. A 5th grade teacher grilled a girl about a rumor that she was gay, and the grilling took place in front of the entire class. We've prepared this video package. Watch this.
Michael, the child's mother, told me she learned this whole incident started because of a rumor spreading throughout the school that her 11-year-old daughter was dating her friend, another 5th grade girl. Now, the student told her mom that her teacher then questioned her about it in front of the entire class.
She took matters into her own hands.
Jasenia Gambino is angry, mostly because her daughter is suffering the consequences of a grave mistake she says her teacher made.
So a 5th grade teacher has grilled a student of hers about a rumor that she's gay in front of her entire classroom. And keep in mind that this 5th grader is only 11 years old, and she's alleged to be a lesbian with her peer, which happens to be her best friend. And she did this in front of all of her peers, in front of all of her classmates. How humiliating, how degrading, and how embarrassing that must have been for her. Lesbian or not, it doesn't matter. In 5th grade, I mean, I knew in preschool that I was gay, but regardless, and I did, but regardless, this is no one's business. It wasn't the place to do it, and thank God for that mama bear, because there need to be more mama bears like that, because that teacher should be reprimanded, and in my opinion, she should be fired. That's absolutely ridiculous to do that, because what it's doing is it's ostracizing her from her classmates, and it's absolutely unacceptable.
It's more than just ostracizing her from her classmates. It's ostracizing her from her self-identity and from growing into all of her potential. And that can be incredibly harmful to any person, much less a child. I agree with you. She should be fired.
Have you heard in the research on this story, is there discussion of legal action yet?
Not that I've seen, but I imagine that there probably will be, and there should.
Yeah. We move out of the USA and queue up entertainment. And a very topical story today breaking is Snoop Dogg apologizes to Gayle King for the rant that he had over Kobe Bryant. We've prepared this sound package. Watch this.
Top of the morning, coming at you live and direct with a message. Two wrongs don't make no right. When you're wrong, you gotta fix it. So with that being said, Gayle King, I publicly tore you down by coming at you in a derogatory manner based off of emotions, me being angry at questions that you asked. Overreacted. I should have handled it way different than that. I was raised way better than that. So I would like to apologize to you publicly for the language that I used and calling you out of your name and just being disrespectful. I didn't mean for it to be like that. I was just expressing myself for a friend that wasn't here to defend himself. A lot of people look up to me and they love me and they appreciate me, so I want to let them know that anytime you mess up, it's okay to fix it. It's okay to man up and say that you're wrong. I apologize. Hopefully we can sit down and talk privately. Have a good day.
What you're seeing there is Snoop Dogg apologizing to Gayle King, but let me play back the entire story for you. On CBS this morning, anchor Gayle King went back in conversation about Kobe Bryant, who died about a week ago in a helicopter crash, and brought up his rape allegations. Snoop Dogg stated on Instagram that she better stop stating things like that before, quote, we come and get you. Even Gayle King stated that the portion of this that was put forward might have misrepresented her in the advertising. And this came forward then with LeBron James, Bill Cosby, and others that were speaking up on behalf of Who am I thinking
Kobe
of now?
Bryant.
Thank you so much with it before we go. And then Oprah Winfrey, of course, Gayle's really good friend, stated that she was getting a lot of death threats. And so the conversation that's really happening now is about that. And we're seeing that there was an apology that Snoop Dogg went on to say that he was raised better than that, and that he was looking to express himself for a friend that had passed and wasn't there to defend himself. But the real conversation here is what was going on with Gayle King. While she did have some support, why were so many people, especially in the black community, there to attack her? Some stated that Snoop Dogg even hates black women. And so there's a chastising by these black men, as it's been stated, that has been a serious issue toward Gayle King.
We move out of the entertainment news here and move to queuing up the vote 2020. An interesting Facebook group has formed. A press release happened about queers against Pete. Highlights the LGBTQ community's frustration with Buttigieg. Napoleon, tell us about what's going on there.
Yes, well, there are several new groups. One of them is Queers Against Pete, another is Queers Not Here for Mayor Pete. And they have started an initiative. It is LGBT, which is Let's Get Buttigieg to Quit. They are stating that he's moderate, that he has billionaire donators, and that he's detached from the LGBT community. He doesn't even watch LGBT media, so of course we invite him to watch our show. Pete Buttigieg only came in third with queer voters in Iowa in this past primary, and a lot of people are stating that he has whitewashed the election, that he's a white cis male, and that after the Marriage Equality Act passed in 2015, there is no more fight for him and the people that he represents, despite the trans violence that's going on, despite work discrimination. And so we're seeing that a lot of people don't feel that he represents the LGBT values, even if he identifies as LGBT.
Any thoughts about what we're watching?
You know, we are our own worst enemy. I've said this before. This Queers Against Buttigieg, this Queers Against Pete group, I think is absolutely deplorable. I think they're doing nothing more than playing in the hands of the Republican National Committee, doing its work and helping to re-elect Donald Trump to another 4 years. It's sad because they're doing it at the detriment of not only the first openly LGBT candidate for the presidency of the United States of America, but for other LGBT candidates up and down the ballot and future LGBT candidates that he is, in return, putting cracks in the glass ceiling for.
I think that there's a lot of validity, though, in people that want him to represent the gay community. And if you feel that you've never been represented and you say, hey, this is a person that has, for the first time, giving you even the slightest bit of a voice, you want that voice to represent you. And if I felt he didn't, and he doesn't really for me, but if I felt like that was the only voice there was, I would absolutely want him to say what I say so that the public knows what I'm thinking and that I'm human.
I think it's interesting that we do this report tonight of what Queers Against Mayor Pete say, and we're also going to report on what Rush Limbaugh has to say about Mayor Pete, and they seem to be very, very similar. Let's talk about Happening Out Television.
Yes, perfect. So Q News tonight is part of the Happening Out Television Network. We are the Daily News. But you can also watch the best of entertainment live every Monday night at 8 p.m. on happening.fun. We are also part of the most popular live gay TV show in the world every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on It's Happening Out. It's a talk show like television's The View with a whole lot of gay people. Gayer than Napoleon's shirt.
I love my shirt. I feel like a genie in it.
It's like Tommy Hilfiger sheets.
Yeah,
we're going to do a little head bob right there.
It is, kind of does look like
right.
that.
We're going to queue up science tonight. We're a gay news show, so we can queue up some science. In Antarctica, an iceberg nearly the size of Atlanta has broken off a glacier in Antarctica. We've got to show you this first. It's fascinating. Watch this.
You can add another glacier to the list of ones experiencing calving events. An iceberg about the size of Malta just broke off from Pine Island Glacier in Antarctica, known as Pig, and then quickly broke into several piglet pieces. The European Space Agency satellites noticed two huge cracks in the glacier last year, so scientists have been paying close attention with the Copernicus Sentinel-1 satellite. This animation shows 57 radar images it captured from February 2019 to 2020, revealing just how fast the cracks grew before the iceberg broke.
In that video, a glacier has broken off in Antarctica that's about the size of Atlanta, or 5 times the size of Manhattan. I mean, this is a really big deal because this is going to raise sea level 4 feet if the rest of the glacier also that it came from is to fall apart and break off as well. So it's very concerning because this leads to the bigger conversation aspect of what this news story is about. And it is global warming, which is real. And what is going to happen with global warming, what's a direct result of that? It's sea level rise. So it's the polar ice caps that melt, and as they melt, sea level rise occurs, and it's a danger to each and every single one of this. And this comes in wake of record temperatures being recorded and coming out of Antarctica, even at 64.9 degrees. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, we've been watching this story our entire lives, I'm sure for a lot longer than that. It's crazy to think that we're watching society just refuse to deal with a problem every single day, every single year, not come up with any slight solution that could help the future growth and the necessity of our planet's survival. We're seeing every day people turn the other cheek and argue about nonsense instead of dealing with the actual state of the planet.
Yeah,
nothing else can be said.
True. We move out of science and move into sports. We cue up sports tonight by reporting that 3 female athletes have sued Connecticut over transgender women being allowed to participate in sports in their state. We've prepared this video package. Watch this.
Federal officials are investigating Connecticut's policy allowing transgender high school athletes to compete as the gender they choose. The Federal Office for Civil Rights announced the probe last week. In June, the families of 3 girls filed a complaint saying their daughters were discriminated against. They competed in track and field against 2 athletes who were identified as male at birth and have male hormones and muscle structure.
It's giving the transgender females the right to compete with biological females.
Now, this story started at the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference, where these 3 cis women targeted these 2 in particular, these 2 specific trans women, and even went as far as to state in what they were putting forward that they were biological men and identified them as males in written language. They were stating that those 2 women, those trans women, removed opportunity, awards, and even scholarships from cis women like themselves, and that they were anxious about competition and depressed when they lost. They state that the policy violates the equal opportunities and funding for women. And so while we're seeing this trans conversation on a national scale as to if people that are trans should be able to compete in sports because of biological differences, we're seeing a little bit of the story where maybe there is something that's happening with women that are losing out on opportunities, and if they are losing out on that sense of equality, it's something that we have to address. But if they're stating that these trans females are men in their articles, they're already disrespecting other people, and women at that, even if they're not cis women. So there has to be some kind of balance in this that we find over time.
Any thoughts?
I think a part of this conversation that's been missed and all too often is missed, that when we have this conversation about letting someone who was born male but identifies as trans female participate in female sports, when you have these cisgender female individuals saying that they don't want them to compete, they're basically reiterating institutionalized toxic masculinity by saying that men, with their strength and just biologically, they are just metaphysically just naturally more superior and stronger than their female counterparts. And I think that's completely and totally idiotic, and they're playing into the very hands of the people that are not seeing them as equal individuals across the board in this country and all over the world, whether it be in sports and arts and culture and politics, what have you. These girls, these young women, I admire them for their opinion and their right to express it, but at the end of the day, I think they're doing themselves as young women a disservice by reiterating the fact that these individuals who happen to be trans women, their argument is that we're born men and therefore they're stronger, so it's unfair. They're reiterating institutionalized sexism.
Yeah. Tonight, before we continue, we are reminding you that we are broadcasting from our new set in the middle of the World AIDS Museum and Education Center here in Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We joke we're coming from the gayest place on planet Earth and a vibrant gay community here in South Florida. We'd like to thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living, for helping us in the construction of this new set in the World AIDS Museum. We continue our news tonight with a strange headline. We are going to cue up trash. Rush Limbaugh's gaffe of calling Mayor Pete booty judge last night to ram it down Trump's throat. This is a strange story. Tonight we queue up trash. The first time we have ever said that at Q News Tonight. Understand why. Rush Limbaugh is apparently obsessed with Mayor Pete, men kissing each other, and ramming something down Donald Trump's throat. You can insert the meme joke here. The February 5th Presidential Medal of Freedom honoree, remember, this is America's highest civilian honor, was presented by Donald Trump during the State of the Union by, quote, for his decades of tireless devotion to our country, end quote. Well, today we learned how this Medal of Freedom winner communicates. You're not going to believe it. Watch this.
Just 1 week after President Trump awarded conservative radio host Rush Limbaugh the Presidential Medal of Freedom, one of the highest civilian awards in the United States, Limbaugh has carried out an attack on Democratic presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg simply for being gay. Have a listen.
They're sitting there and they're looking at Mayor Pete. 37-year-old gay guy, Mayor South Bend, loves to kiss his husband on the debate stage. And they're saying, okay, how's this going to look? 37-year-old gay guy kissing his husband on stage next to Mr. Man, Donald Trump. What's going to happen there? And they got to be looking at that, and they've got to be saying that despite all the great progress and despite all the great wokeness and despite all the great ground that's been covered, America's still not ready to elect a gay guy kissing his husband on the debate stage president. They have to be saying this, don't they? Now, there may be some Democrats who think that is the ticket. There may be some Democrats who think that's exactly what we need to do, Rush. Get a gay guy kissing his husband on stage, you ram it down Trump's throat, and beat him in a general election. Really? Having fun envisioning that.
We don't have much to say here except that Rush Limbaugh is really trash. He diminishes all of us. His years of tireless work to be a Medal of Freedom winner has been to pursue racism, misogyny, and homophobia. Rush has actively worked against HIV understanding, marriage equality, and has a deep history of anti-gay and anti-trans agendas. In 1989, Rush famously said about the best way to prevent HIV/AIDS was, I quote, "Do not ask another man to bend over and make love at the exit point," end quote. That's bigotry. Worse, that's deeply hurtful. So today's news on Mayor Pete is no different, except, Rush, you now also look ignorant, not because of men kissing, but because more than 80% of America have no issue with men kissing, whether in the privacy of their bedroom or on the stage of a presidential election. And for the record, Rush, like him or hate him, I welcome the Donald's handling of the Pete. The latter is a war veteran, a hero, and he didn't hide in his father's money or in a bone spur in his feet so as to not stand up for America. Rush, you did get one thing right. Mayor Pete might not be in that final debate with President Trump, but I agree with you on one thing. If he is, I can't wait to watch the first LGBT presidential candidate in history ram it down the president's throat. Tonight at Q News Tonight, we move on to the big finish.
No thanks to Rush.
No thanks to Rush. All right. This is kind of a lightning round of the big topics of the day, and we're going to talk about each in just a couple of moments on each. If we go too long, we'll ring the bell. Ready?
Let's do it.
All right. The director of Thor 4 says he would like it if Valkyrie is explicitly queer in the movie. What do you think?
Valkyrie was supposed to be queer in the first movie. There was a scene where she was coming out of a bedroom with a woman, bisexual, and it was completely cut. And now there's a whole new gay person that's going to be the first queer person in the next movie, I think The Eternals. So they took it from a woman who was bisexual and a person of color and gave it to some random white guy.
Do you know who Valkyrie is?
I don't know.
Tessa Thompson! She was also just in Men in Black with Chris Hemsworth.
To quote Mariah Carey, I don't know her.
We continue in the big finish. Trump claims Roger Stone's jury was tainted by bias.
I would say that Donald Trump's jury was tainted by bias.
I don't like reading the word tainted when I'm thinking of Trump at all in the first place. But also, isn't the whole point of a jury to have that removed in the first place? If you feel that they're biased, you're supposed to have them removed in the beginning, not at the end. How can you claim that at the end?
At the end of the day, there was no bias in Roger Stone's trial.
How could anyone not be biased toward Trump, though? I mean, at this point, everything that's going on in our country.
4 U.S. attorneys resigned.
Career U.S. attorneys, prosecutors.
Impossible to not be biased.
We continue in the big finish, talking about pro-Trump PACs raised more than $60 million in January. Big news. Thoughts?
You got to raise money if you want to compete. So this speaks to the fact that the Republicans and Donald Trump are going to be well-equipped and well-prepared to put together a campaign in November of 2020, and Democrats, whoever our nominee is, we all need to get behind her and make sure that we do everything that we can to elect her the next president of the United States.
Or the gay guy.
Or the gay guy.
No, I agree with you. I wanted to see us talk more about Klobuchar and the more money she raised over this. I bet you could kick his ass.
We continue in the big finish talking about the candidate that's not in the race yet. Mike Bloomberg is paying online influencers to post memes for his 2020 campaign.
I didn't realize that I should be reading his emails. I was just putting it into trash. My bad.
You know, I don't think this is unheard of. I've been on other campaigns. The last campaign that I was on, actually, this is something that we did. So this isn't unlikely. It's not unheard of. But at least this isn't Russians promoting propaganda to promote.
That's a funny point. I love that the old white guy is using something modern like memes to try to be elected president.
Isn't that how Trump won? Or won?
Maybe. We continue in the big finish. This affects all of us. Samsung's new foldable smartphone, Galaxy Z Flip, is $1,380.
Does anyone here even not have? Does anyone here have an iPhone? Who has an iPhone?
This isn't sponsored, by the way. No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't because his phone is sponsored by Grindr.
No, but you know, first of all, I don't know what your point was yet, but I'm really angry that it's not just $1,400. Why did they have to take that $20 off like you're getting the deal?
Really? That's the big news here?
It's not the big news.
$20.
It's a really cool phone because it's a flip phone and it has one giant screen.
The larger aspect of this conversation is this is so out of touch with the American consumer. Unfortunately, a lot of consumers will pay this, but this is more than the mortgage or monthly rent payment for most
Americans. But that's what Apple did first, and it's going to keep following forward.
Okay, we continue in the big finish. This is a big one, gay America, LGBT America. Happy 46th birthday, Robbie Williams.
I'm excited about this. I love Robbie Williams. I used to work for Abercrombie & Fitch for years, and we played a lot of his music.
I love Abercrombie & Fitch in London. One of the best stores.
Yeah, and it was so fun. So that's actually how I was introduced to him. And I really love his music. I think he's great, and he's a wonderful ally to the LGBTQ community.
His bathing suit and underwear pictures are just magnificent.
All of that could be true. And it's the 20th anniversary of when his one song, Millennium, was everywhere. And that's really all I think about right now, is that he was 26 when he was doing that.
Wow. Wow. The big finish, another thing that we look at. And this is another great anniversary, right along with the one that we just talked about in birthday. On this day, 18 years ago, Rudy Giuliani received the honorary knighthood from the Queen.
Mike Pence knighted Rudy Giuliani? Oh, wrong queen, sorry. Wrong queen, sorry.
When I read this today, I literally busted out laughing. Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Well, but not only that, I mean, he was like the hero of 9/11.
Yeah, for that year he was.
Wait.
Bush was also a hero that year, so obviously that distorted a lot of the hero's
jokes
mentality.
about my age all the time. Rudy Giuliani was an old man in 2002. Yeah. How old is he? What elixir is he drinking to even be alive today?
It's Kool-Aid.
Can you lose a knighthood ever?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
The big finish. The big finish. Iowa bill would ban teachers from saying that Pete Buttigieg is gay without notifying parents.
Wow. This is crazy to me because you know what? Regardless of what your opinions are on LGBT people in a public or private institution of education in the United States of America, if your children are listening to Justin Bieber, if they're listening to Selena Gomez or any of these people, Taylor Swift, they know what LGBT is. They kind of know what sex is. They know what these things are because film and television and music is teaching these children what this is about. This is absolutely ludicrous, and this is, again, consequential of elections because the Republicans in the state legislature in Iowa control the state legislature, and they're putting forth homophobic policies. So offensive.
It's really interesting to look at this story and then look at it juxtaposed to the one that we were talking about earlier with the teacher that grilled the student about being gay. You have these different faces of hate, where you have one face that looks like this, where you can't even talk about being gay, you can't mention it, it's the Voldemort, it's a word you can't say. And then the other side of it is where you publicly shame somebody for being human and for being who they are, or not even, just making accusations.
You know, it's funny, when I heard this, I thought it makes perfect sense. The state that screwed up the caucus so badly, it's the exact same thinking here on the other side that are just absolutely idiotic. And by the way, it's exactly what I want my teachers to do. Waste all their time on notifications of using the word gay. It's the best use of American teachers. That is our big finish tonight at Q News Tonight. And that is today's news for the LGBT community on the world's first daily gay evening news show. Remember, if it's important to the LGBT community, it's important to Q News Tonight. We are literally out of the closet, look around me,
into the headlines.
And into the headlines. And this is Q News Tonight. Thank you, and we're going to see you daily at 7 p.m. And by the way, guys, happy Valentine's Day.
Yes, happy Valentine's Day.
Good night, everybody.